Everyone.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the April State Advisory Council meeting. My name is Morgan Crossman and I'm the Executive Director at Building Bright Futures. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our second all virtual State Advisory Council meeting. And so I'm going to quickly go over a couple of Zoom logistics. So if you are not the one that's speaking, please mute your line. We would love to ask that folks indicate in the chat bar if you have questions, and we absolutely encourage participation throughout the meeting. So questions, comments, please use the chat function. That's something we're going to be monitoring throughout today's meeting. For folks who are speaking, please restate your name before you ask your question or make your comment. We do want folks on the phone to know who's speaking at all times. And then finally, we are recording this meeting, so you will have access to the full meeting afterwards, as well as a recap. So for those of you who have joined us, you know that it's our practice to have a mindful moment at the start of our State Advisory Council meetings, as well as our all staff meetings. So I'd like to invite Amanda Biggs, our Chittenden Regional Coordinator, to lead us through that 1-minute exercise.
Can you guys hear me? Great. Okay, sorry, I was having a hard time hearing. So I'm going to lead everybody in a mindful moment, and it's up to you if you want to turn off your video right now. So gently close your eyes, and I want to invite you to begin breathing deeply into your abdomen. Take a few deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. And feel yourself in your body right now, in this moment. And as you breathe, invite your body to completely and fully relax. Imagine that all your stress is flowing out with each breath. Let the tension in your brow go. Let the tension in your lips go. Let the tension in your eyes go. And relax your shoulders. And try rolling them out if that feels good to you. Just sensing that your body is becoming soft and comfortable. Your mind is slowing down. Now bring our attention back to our breath. Place your hands on your belly. Take some deep, cleansing breaths, noticing the rise and fall. We're going to end with one more audible breath in through your nose and out through your mouth before we come back to this virtual meeting space together. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Amanda. All right, so before we get started today, I do want to take a moment to outline today's agenda. So we're going to start by outlining our statewide early childhood priorities, and you'll hear a bit more about those from Ellen. And then we will have updates and priorities by our agency partners as well as SAC members, and then we will end with a discussion around family safety and mental health. And before we get started, I wanted to do a brief introduction. So for everyone who's on the call right now, we'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourself in the chat bar with your full name and affiliation so that we can note your participation and feedback throughout the meeting. And then while everyone's doing that, I'm going to be doing a verbal roll call for State Advisory Council members. For folks who are on the SAC, please introduce yourself with your name, whether you're a member of the executive committee, and your representing organization. All right, and don't forget to unmute yourself. So I'm going to start with Cheryl Wilcox.
I was just typing in the chat bar. Hopefully you can hear me. This is Cheryl Wilcox, Department of Mental Health, Normal Times. I'm the Interagency Planning Director. Right now, I'm providing support also to our policy and communications team.
Thanks, Cheryl. Renee Kelly. Stephen Burbeco.
Hi, I'm Stephen Burbeco, Deputy Commissioner of Child Development Division.
Thanks, Stephen. Auburn Watersong.
Hi, Auburn Watersong, Director of Trauma Prevention and Resilience Development at AHS.
Thanks, Auburn. Ken Jones.
Morgan, it's Renee. I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Hi, Renee. Thank you.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Ken Jones. Kate Rogers. Brina Holmes. Representative Jessica Brumstead.
Hi, I'm Jessica Brumstead, State Representative from Shelburne and St. George.
Thanks, Jessica. Chloe Leary.
I'm Chloe Leary, the Executive Director of the Winston Prouty Center and at-large member.
Thanks, Chloe. Kim Kaiser. Allie Richards.
Hey, Morgan, this is Janet Kilburn. Sorry I couldn't unmute, but I'm here for Brina Holmes.
Hi, Janet. Thank you.
Hi.
All right. Julie Cadwallader-Staub. Sorry, Julie. I know I just messed up your last name.
No, you really didn't. You did a good job. So I'm Julie Cadwallader-Staub. I'm a member at large and from the Stern Center for Language and Learning.
Thank you. Nicole Grenier. Emily Merrill.
Hi, this is Emily, parent rep and at-large member. Nice to see everyone today.
Thanks, Emily. Amy Johnson.
Hi, Amy Johnson, Director of the Parent-Child Center of NCSS, and I'm here representing the Vermont Parent-Child Center Network.
Thanks, Amy. Christy Swenson.
Hi, I'm Christy. I'm the Director of Capstone Head Start, and I'm here to represent Head Start.
Thanks, Christy. And Flora Diaz-Smith.
I'm Flora Diaz, and I'm representing the Vermont School Boards Association.
Thanks, Flora. All right, so for folks who didn't have a chance to introduce themselves or that were on mute, if anyone else wants to introduce themselves from the SAC, by all means. Ken, Kate, Kim Kaiser, Allie Richards, or a representative from Let's Grow Kids.
Yeah, hey Morgan, it's Kate Rogers from the Agency of Education. Sorry, I was just getting on when you said my name.
Hi, Kate, thank you.
Hi, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for being with us today. We're so glad to virtually see you. I did want to open and say, welcome to some of our first time attendees. We do have 50 participants on right now. I do know that a couple of others are trying to join the call now. But for those of you who have been a part of our State Advisory Council or part of our broader Building Bright Futures network, you know that consistent with our charge under Act 104, our role during the COVID pandemic really hasn't changed. Our broader responsibility is to support communities by identifying needs and understanding what the gaps are in the early childhood service system and bringing people together to strategize and take action within regions and at the state level. Our job's also to make sure that all of the partners in the early childhood arena are coming together to coordinate and strategize to best meet the needs of families and kids. And just as important, we are also directly connecting with our agency partners as well as decision makers statewide to make sure that they understand what's happening on the ground for kids and families, that they understand the questions, concerns, as well as the needs of folks that are working directly with kids and families on the ground. We're also ensuring that we're disseminating the appropriate information to the field from our agency partners and making sure that there are some direct lines of communication. So on Friday, I did disseminate a letter to the early childhood field that provides an update on some of the priorities that BBF is focused on. If you haven't received that letter, please let us know. It's also posted on our website, and one of the members of our team, I'm sure, can post it in the chat function. So I do want to say thank you to all of you for all of the work that you're doing, whether it's within regions, directly working with kids and families, or at the agency level. We know that you are working incredibly hard to make sure that we're meeting the needs of kids and families. And at the end of the meeting today, I do want to circle back around to Building Bright Futures role and see how best we can support you all as we move forward through the next couple of months. So if we want to go back to the PowerPoint slide for a couple of minutes, I do want to outline the emerging themes and priorities that we are hearing from folks on the ground. And that will show you a little bit about why the agenda focuses so much on family safety and mental health for today. So in terms of the broad scope of the concerns and the questions that we're hearing from the early childhood community, not surprisingly, we're hearing about childcare, but we're also hearing about food security and basic needs. So the fact that families need access to food and basic needs such as diapers, wipes, baby formula, a growing resilience on food shelves, and promoting the use of WIC and SNAP, as well as school food programs. We are hearing quite a bit about family safety and mental health. So again, thinking about what are the needs of caregivers and families as they are now potentially working full-time or on unemployment, while they are also now either caring for their young children or focused on distance learning. We're also hearing a ton about the mounting economic pressures that are faced by parents and families, as well as a greater risk for domestic violence and abuse, as well as substance misuse, and the long-term impacts of trauma. We're also hearing quite a bit about healthcare, and not just in terms of access to health insurance and healthcare, but thinking about telehealth and what does that look like in this moment, and how do we improve our ability to meet the needs of kids and families, both in person but also virtually. Thinking about some of our specialty populations, right? So concerns for pregnant and postpartum women, and access to lactation, home visiting, and mental health services. And then challenges for families with children with disabilities and special health care needs. Another concern is technology. So the fact that we have limited connectivity in different parts of our state, and how do we ensure that folks have access to what they need to be able to meet the needs of their kids in terms of remote and distance learning and continuity of education. So thinking about how we set appropriate expectations and how we communicate with the field about what resources are out there and how we can support them. And then the last is, and this isn't listed on the slide, but concern and questions around reopening and recovery. So really needing clear guidance and expectations for this process of reopening Vermont, and thinking really critically about the safety measures that remain. So I'm going to turn it over to Ellen, another one of our regional coordinators, who's going to talk about how these regional priorities came up and how we landed on family safety and mental health for today's meeting.
Hi, everyone. So I get this wonderful job. I'm the regional coordinator in the Springfield and Hartford AHS districts. And if you look at this map, some of you may have seen this map before. Last summer, we created a map with our 2 top priorities for the year for the Early Childhood Action Plan Summit. And things have sort of changed since then. And so we created this map today to show what we think is the top concerns right now for our regions concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. And this changes quickly. I think now we've been in this for over a month, and about a month ago, I could have said that my region's childcare was being talked about a ton. And now we kind of have the lay of the land. People have the childcare needs, and the concerns have shifted a little bit. So as you can see, there's many similar needs across the state. Food security, basic needs, family safety, and mental health seem to come up in a lot of regions. And so I wanted you to be able to see where people are having these needs. And the way that councils came up with this is, since we're on the ground, we have a really unique position where we hear things from state level people, but we also hear things from families or service providers that directly work with families. And so we've continued to meet and attend meetings and talk to people. And so that's how our regional coordinators came up with these topics and what we thought with connecting with the people in our regions was the strongest concerns. So just a couple of things for my regions, because I'm going to highlight those because I can, that we're doing is we're still continuing to support the food banks and the diaper banks and parent-child centers doing their wonderful work. We're also hosting trainings for providers to help deal with this crazy time and how do they connect with families virtually. We've created times for parents to meet and chat virtually online, some that are facilitated, some that are not facilitated. And then we're also continuing to think about how do we support families beyond academics. So we have work groups working on some of these issues throughout our regions. So that's a quick snippet of what's going on in my area. And I'll throw it back to Morgan.
Thank you, Ellen. And I think what's really important for folks to remember is that, again, things are changing so rapidly. So yes, we have done a phenomenal job in the state of Vermont of standing up new programs in the childcare arena, and recognize that as the next few weeks go on and we're thinking about reopening different sectors and supporting children and families in different ways, that these needs are going to shift, and we're going to need to be collaborating and making sure that we are elevating questions and concerns, just as we have been as we've had this kind of shutdown of different components of our work. So thank you all for your incredible dedication to making sure that that happens. So let's jump into key agency and state advisory council member updates. So, we've invited representatives from some of our state agencies, and we're also inviting members of our state advisory council to provide a brief update on their emergent priorities and what they're facing within their sector. And I think what would be great is that as you have questions for these agency partners, please include them in the chat box. And then folks from our agencies and state advisory council members, as you are finished with your prepared remarks, if you can then jump into the chat and respond in the moment to what you can. We will also capture all of the questions and comments throughout today's meeting and then make sure that they're disseminated back out. So we're going to start with Morgan Cole from Children's Integrated Services in the Child Development Division. And if folks have any questions at the end, if we do have some time, we will open it up live for some additional questions and answers.
Can you guys hear me? This is Morgan Cole.
Yes.
Great. So some quick updates from CIS, both in terms of kind of what's going on with the system overall right now, as well as a little bit of particular attention to the topics at hand today around family safety and mental health. Services for CIS are continuing to be delivered. They have shifted almost exclusively to remote service delivery, so people reaching out either by phone or other telehealth mechanisms. We've been working closely with VDH and Medicaid to make sure that we have as much flexibility to keep service continuity as much as possible going on. That means that a lot of families are still engaging with services and that those are proving, more important than ever right now. However, there are certainly a number of families who, as with many other services, are struggling to access those services either because they're just feeling overwhelmed and needing to put a pause on services because they have technical barriers to being able to access those. I think a lot of the things that other people are coming across in service delivery. So we are seeing some caseload reductions and families that ideally our providers would be getting out to very regularly that they're not able to reach. Of the families continuing to be served, providers in the field are reporting to us that they're seeing an increase in the complexity of needs among those families, which is not surprising given the current context, and that COVID-19 impacts are very evident in that way. As I touched on, our providers are sharing some concerns around child and family safety and well-being and mental health specifically because of this, especially among the families that they're not able to get to. So there's real concern about not only the families where we know there's something going on because we're actually, getting on the phone or getting on Zoom with them and being able to address their issues as much as possible, but those that we're not able to reach and we don't know what's going on, and we can reasonably expect that they're having some real challenges right now. So I think our partners in the field are working really hard to reach out in, resourceful and innovative ways to everyone that they can and to provide those supports. And there's still real concerns there. We are also just looking ahead a little bit, anticipating that as things begin to reopen and in-person service delivery starts to happen again, that is probably going to result in, an increase in caseloads and more of that complexity and intensity of cases that providers are seeing, both as referrals start to go up, as childcare programs and pediatricians' offices and all of that are seeing more people, and as families have a little bit more bandwidth to engage in those services. And then lastly, I'll just say that at the state level, in terms of the fiscal relief that we're trying to put in place for providers, where there's kind of two pieces going on with that. One is a more immediate, what we're calling a provider retainer fund. So we're very busy getting that set up, trying to get that rolled out as quickly as possible to provide some fiscal relief to agencies who have seen a reduction in their revenue during this time because they're not able to serve as many families as they normally would, but still have the same, staffing costs and overhead and all of that, as well as having a lot of conversations right now looking ahead to July 1st when we were anticipating implementing payment reform findings and reallocating resources across regions. And so we're really looking carefully at our plan for that, considering that did include some significant cuts to some regions and increases to others. So we want to make sure we're moving forward as thoughtfully as possible around that, given the COVID-19 realities right now.
Thank you so much, Morgan. And folks, again, just a reminder, you can put questions directly into the chat. And then for folks, I know, Morgan, you have to jump off a little bit early today, but we will make sure that Morgan gets all of your questions directly after the call.
Thank you. And we do have, Karen Belowski Branch from the CIS team on, so she may be able to answer some that come up. Thank you all.
Thanks, Morgan. Okay. I also want to mention for State Advisory Council members, before we jump in to our next agency presenter, if you are planning on making remarks and giving an update from your sector, can you just please note it in the chat so I can introduce you in the next couple of minutes. So next up is Cheryl Wilcox.
Hi, everyone. This is the biggest Zoom meeting I've been a part of. It's really exciting to see all of you and so many faces. I've missed seeing everyone in person. So I would say, certainly building off of what Morgan said, fiscal relief is a major issue facing mental health agencies. And also want to make sure that folks know, because there have been different information put out in different times, that mental health agencies are only doing telehealth, and that's not true. So for the majority, telehealth is being provided, but crisis services are open. Designated and specialized service agencies are doing risk assessments when there's a crisis. So just also wanted to make sure we don't want anyone not reaching out thinking that services aren't available. So being sure that folks know these are our mental health agencies are considered essential. And there's amazing work being done. And we're actually putting together some information in partnership with Vermont Care Partners, the network, for the designated and specialized service agencies about the innovative work happening. So DMH is partnering with Vermont Care Partners to do that, because we've just been really impressed with how creative folks are being to continue supporting adults, children, families during this time. Department of Mental Health, in collaboration and partnership with ADAP at the Department of Health, applied for a SAMHSA emergency grant and received it. The maximum was $2 million. We got the maximum. It was actually just, the funding was approved today by Joint Fiscal Committee so that we can start moving things out the door. And so the funds are very targeted from SAMHSA, which is Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, for those with severe mental illness and with substance use disorder. So I say that knowing that's an adult population, and we know it impacts children because a lot of these folks are parents, and that as we expand crisis supports and services across our network, that will also create great opportunity for children as well. So there will be more information coming about that, but it's really exciting that the grant was put out by SAMHSA. We had 7 business days to turn it around. We got it in and actually found out 4 business days later that we got the grant. So there's certainly lightning speed in our realm of state and federal environment. And so that's been great to see. There's also a lot of work being done by DMH that hopefully you've seen around pushing information out to communities through public service announcements. Governor Scott did one last weekend about mental health. There's also another public service announcement. We've worked with the Vermont State Police and Trooper Hunt, who has the Plot Hound Loki, to do a couple PSAs focused on children's mental health and some messaging for children. So that will be coming. We've been doing a lot of this messaging in collaboration with the Department of Health, because the Department of Mental Health actually doesn't have a communications person. We've created a small and mighty team of 3 people. So our senior policy advisor, Daisy Berbecco, Kathy Hensey, who does a lot of mental health and health integration, and myself to move things out. So we also have a number of one-pagers talking about mental wellness in general, mental health, what to do when you're quarantined or isolated. If any of you want or need direct links to the website, let me know. I'm happy to help with that. And we also are working, DMH and Department of Health, in collaboration now with our first responders, because there's a lot of concern that as folks from police, fire, EMS are going out, and then making sure that they have support and information too about how they receive support. Wanted to also let folks know we have been monitoring the crisis text line data. So with the Vermont crisis text line, wanted to be clear, we haven't seen a huge upward trend in monthly data yet, but the past 2 weeks there has been more folks reaching out to the crisis text line. And the majority of folks reaching out are females and those LGBTQ community between the ages of 14 and 34. The top issues being seen are depression and anxiety. So not surprising, but just wanting to point it out to say that we are closely monitoring and thinking about that. I think our hope with the SAMHSA grant is that we can build more of a foundation of outreach and support, knowing that as more folks go out in the community, we're going to see increase in mental health challenges. And we've been having a lot of dialogue on our team about children who already have social anxiety and depression, and just thinking of being pretty comfortable with being isolated, and that we want to be prepared that in the fall, when children start returning to school, that we're prepared that more children may have a much harder time than getting out. And also supporting parents and caregivers that having additional support right now, and even parenting older kids with more structure and supports that you would do when they were younger is fine and appropriate, and that children are going to need different levels of support during this time. So really wanting to make sure we keep that on the radar and that we're communicating about that and supporting families and caregivers during this time. So those are really high level pieces that have been happening in the Department of Mental Health.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, and congratulations on the grants.
Thank you.
So we have Janet Kilburn from the Department of Health. Janet, can you unmute yourself?
Sure. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi there all. I wanted to share some updates from the health department. Of course, we've been really busy with the COVID response, and we have 6 kind of emergency teams that a lot of maternal and child health staff are busy helping with. But a very cool partnership. We talk about this crisis as increasing and deepening our partnerships, has been with these daily child health calls that we have, and that's VCHIP hosts those calls, and BBF leadership has been able to join those calls, and that's with family practice docs, pediatricians across the state, and lots of things are talked about on those calls besides kind of COVID and health updates about, things like all the things we're talking about today: food insecurity, child safety, domestic violence, mental health issues. So that's been just great to have BBF on those calls. Another great thing we're hearing from those calls, positive feedback on the Help Me Grow ASQ online system, which luckily a few pediatric practices were starting to pilot before this hit, and they're finding it essential for telehealth and virtual well child visits. So really trying to expand that platform now with this opportunity. We have 4 home health sites coming on board with that. We have 9 childcare sites that were up and running, and should be, as soon as we kind of move to the providers that are providing care to using that platform, that should be happening over the summer. And I just invite all of you, if you have home visitors, CIS teams, folks that would benefit from having that virtual platform when they can't do in-person home visits, we're happy to help connect and roll that out for them. Let's see, another thing, Help Me Grow is helping with the essential worker effort, partnership with CDD and Let's Grow Kids and BBF. And there will be a new resource of medical students and childcare providers who are going to provide either volunteer or paid in-home care. So that's coming soon, and Help Me Grow would be the state entity to connect workers and anybody going back to work who wants to access that in-home care. We're also keeping the list of clinicians trained in perinatal mood and anxiety disorders up to date during this time. We've updated it with folks who have telehealth services, also with prescribing providers. So as you hear about mental health issues and new parents, new mothers, anxiety and depression increasing, please refer to Help Me Grow for that connection. We're also working really closely with our perinatal mood and anxiety disorder STAMP grant and those 4 pilot sites. Let's see, it's Washington County, Rutland, Franklin, and Chittenden. And those sites have been given permission with their funding to buy extra minutes for families with phones and do other kind of concrete supports to help families access telehealth and perinatal mood and anxiety support. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out. Another resource I'll mention around this topic is WIC. WIC is open, so they have really ramped up their phone support, virtual services, and they have increased telehealth for breastfeeding support in all the regions of the state. This is something we always wanted to do. Again, it's another opportunity that came out of COVID, and we hope, and we're going to make sure it stays. But so if you're seeing that gap in your region, please refer to WIC. There's a lot of families who are now eligible with being unemployed, children under 5, and I can put in the chat box the link and the information so you have that. And also our health department website, Cheryl mentioned it, we have 15 people now on the COVID communications effort, and lots of cross promotion with other sites with resources. We have a new 1-pager on child safety and coping for families. So please check that out. And the other thing I'll say is put a plug in for Help Me Grow, referring and connecting these families to basic needs and food resources. The University of Vermont did a survey on food insecurity, and food insecurity is up 33% in our state as a result of this, and largely with unemployed, marginal, people who've been laid off. So they are not accessing food assistance programs, and they may not know, but if you please help us get the word out, because that's something we have seen calls drop off around that to Help Me Grow. So we really need to make sure families know what's out there and can help them get connected. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Janet.
Sure.
All right. So I did see a couple of folks on the State Advisory Council and others who'd like to take a couple of minutes to provide updates. So Julie, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. It's so wonderful not only to see people's faces in that little film strip box that we get, but also to hear your voices and get these updates. It's inspiring to hear what all is going on in response to this just unprecedented time. So as you all know, I work for the Stern Center for Language and Learning. So our sector, so to speak, is really about literacy. And the lack of proficiency in reading was already a crisis before COVID. You may know that less than half of our third graders were reading proficiently before the pandemic. So now, of course, we are concerned that kids are not receiving effective literacy instruction and are falling even further behind during this time. And this is of particular concern, as you might imagine, for kids who are on IEPs and kids who may not qualify for an IEP, but who still learn differently and need additional support. So we have scholarships available to allow access to the expertise of the Stern Center instructors and evaluators for children who come from families with moderate or low income. And the need for scholarship assistance, of course, is increasing dramatically as unemployment soars and working hours are reduced for many. Already 1/3 of our students receive scholarships, and we anticipate that that's just going to increase from there. I wanted to mention to everybody that we are offering Building Blocks, which is our professional learning program that offers early care and education professionals, including parents, developmentally appropriate play-based strategies that foster early literacy. And we're offering it now online for free through our partnership with Champlain College. It's a 1-credit course, so now is available at no cost. When we first announced this, it's been a couple of weeks ago now, in early April, we had over 200 people sign up for it. And I just want to encourage everybody to reach out to their partners if you haven't already. Reach out to your networks, please, and let people know that Building Blocks is available. Since it's online and based on these all video-based modules, it's totally go at your own pace. You can stop in the middle, pick it up whenever, and it's hands-on, so it really works well whether you're a parent with young children unexpectedly at home 24/7, or a childcare provider who now may have a little bit more time to do some professional development. I also wanted to add that our e-learning program has, of course, expanded dramatically during this time, and all of our instruction is online. So for kids, regardless of where they are in the state, who need our instruction, between scholarships and e-learning, it really is widely available. Likewise, we're offering a series of webinars that are free that you can see, you can explore on the website. And last but not least, and this really connects with our theme for this meeting about mental health, we are really strengthening our work in the social emotional realm of early childhood. We have a new book that has just come out that's a practical guide for sharing hands-on activities for kids who love to learn by doing. It includes a lot of explicit instruction so that the social emotional perspective of early childhood is something that we're working hard to develop some really strong resources and webinars in that realm too. So I'm happy to answer any questions in the chat bar. And, you know, I appreciate the opportunity just to talk for a few minutes about what we have going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. And for folks who are giving updates, it would be great after the meeting for you to provide a quick summary written for us and links to how folks can access that information. And we'll include all of that in our recap that we send out, in addition to the question and answer section. Flor, do you want to take a couple of minutes?
Sure. I just wanted to share it, just because you were talking about the focus on social and emotional learning, a couple of things, because we are seeing a really huge increase on that, and we're unable to really tell where kids are, because by not seeing them physically, it's hard to tell. It's a little bit easier to hide how they are. So we've been, they just started a new activity of sharing sketchbooks with all the kids to try to get them, you know, out if necessary in the yard, and just bringing back some of that things, and dropping them off with the same bus that is doing our delivery for the families for food needs. That also has increased 20% in since the last time we talked. But you guys all know that. The one quick comment that I wanted to make, just and Morgan touched on this, is that I feel like we should take advantage or do something in the redesigning and prioritizing our community and common, how do I say it? Take advantage of the platform we have right now. So not try to just, so as our mission as the BBA hasn't changed, but now we have like this huge megaphone. So how do we influence and help support the policy that helps, you know, cradle to career vision? So how do we change the structures of poverty at the same time that we're tackling all this? How do we help take this as an opportunity to influence the policy, so that we continue, you know, it's a work that we've been doing, but not just try to solve it in the short term. How do we change those structures of how do we influence, since we have a megaphone, we have all this, you know, 50 people just in this meeting, so that it's, we get that work that we've been trying to do for years. That's all.
Thank you so much, Flora. It's a really great point. I really appreciate you bringing that up, especially because we do have a really powerful group of leadership on this call, and we have an opportunity to make a difference in this moment. So thank you. I do want to take just a quick moment to allow Dr. Rick Reardon from Castleton, he's the Director of Education, to provide a couple of quick updates. Rick?
Hi, is everybody here? Good. Really one quick update. We had offered the Early Childhood Educators Institute for the first 3 years face-to-face 4 straight days in July. And we're wrestling with whether we're going to be able to pull this off as an institute online, but we think we've got a structure that'll work for an online offering. It'll essentially be a Tuesday, Thursday series of Zoom sessions with synchronous and asynchronous work, along with some plenary sessions in the morning, utilizing some Zoom webinar functions. So more on that to come. The registration opens on the 18th of May. We will again be offering a number of the same categories: the peer review, portfolio work, a lot of things in special ed, the legal and financial course, courses on trauma. We've got a new course we're offering this year in partnership with the I-Team on augmentative and alternative communication. We have a new lending lab at Castleton that we're running in partnership with the I-Team and the Vermont Assistive Technology Program. Stern Center will be involved again with building blocks. We've got an autism spectrum disorder course. And this year we are also offering a self-care course in the time of trauma and displacement, for the very reasons that you've all brought up, that it just makes as much sense to remind our folks our practitioners in the field that they've got to take care of themselves as much as they've got to take care of others. So we think we've got a workable institute worked out for July. It'll start on the 21st, which will be a Tuesday. And as I said before, more on that to come as we sort of finalize the instructors and the syllabi.
Thank you so much, Rick. All right, before we transition to the roundtable discussion, any last updates from any of our state advisory council members? Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over to
short on time, Morgan. I could do just a quick one from Let's Grow Kids.
Yeah, go ahead, Allie.
And I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the call. I'm not sure if anyone mentioned we had a wonderful roundtable this morning with Congressman Peter Welch. He asked us, kind of last minute to host to get him a sense of what's happening on the ground. So it was a sort of a small group of advocacy organizations, but it is available to watch since CAX reported that it was a public forum kind of at last minute. But anyway, so basically it was just really heartening to hear the congressman say that early childhood education, child care, is just so important. He's so proud of the Vermont groundwork that has gone into this, and now the world is seeing how crucial this is, and we have to, he was using words, we must, make this a key part of our recovery, and we have no choice, and, and he believes that federal dollars will play a key role in that. So, we shall see what happens. We all said we stood ready to support him, and, it was a really great group of folks on the ground, some early educators, PCCs, Head Start, the Early Advocacy Alliance, Morgan from BBF, and Beth. So anyway, it was just a great group, and Sonia from Front AYC. And then I would just say a couple of things. We're really turning our attention to the reopening of childcare right now. What does that look like? What are key principles? Hearing from the field, hearing from families. People are really starting to focus on that. I don't think, by the way, it's imminent as in any day now the governor is just going to say tomorrow we're going to open it up, but I think it's imminent enough for us to plan thoughtfully for it, so maybe have a little bit more time. And otherwise, as you all may know, we've been really working hard on getting supplies. It seems so basic, but it's going to be a crucial part of actually reopening childcare, supplies out to folks who are doing childcare for essential personnel, which, by the way, I think we have a lot to learn about the reopening, looking at the essential personnel childcare, how that's been going with health guidance and new sort of class sizes and requirements and stuff like that. So there's a lot of national, by the way, TA and energy around this too that we're tapping into. And we did just close down our sort of personal middle management of Let's Grow Kids of getting supplies to those that are doing essential childcare right now, and sort of created a more of a steady procurement for them, which is great, but hopefully that can lead to a more sustainable procurement of supplies that will allow more to reopen when we get the order from the governor. So that's just a quick overview. There's lots of other things happening, but I thought maybe those things would be of most interest to this crew.
Perfect, thanks, Allie. Any other last minute updates, SAC members, agency partners? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Beth Trzanski, and we'll move into our roundtable discussion.
Great. Thanks all. We have invited a couple people to queue us up. We have two questions that we really want us to consider as we're coming together today with the State Advisory Council, both to share stories of resilience where we see our communities, our families working together despite these challenges. And then we will shift to also hear where we see that there are gaps, barriers, and challenges that may require strategizing and a coordinated response. So we do have a few regional partners from across the state who are with us today. Kaya Ganguly is with us, and invited her to share. Kaya is with the United Counseling Service in Bennington. Are you there, Kaya? Do you want to test your audio?
Yep, I'm here. I'm becoming a Zoom expert these days.
Oh, I bet. Kaya, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with the folks you're working with?
Sure. So at UCS, I'm the Assistant Director of Youth and Family Services for UCS. So I'm spearheading a lot of what we're doing on the ground. And as you heard from the Department of Mental Health, we are open and we are doing more than just Zoom and telehealth. So that is the majority of what we're finding ourselves occupied with. But we actually have been working this year with OneCare. They gave us an innovation grant to create a psychiatric urgent care for kids that we call PUC. And initially, and what it was a stopgap between crisis in the community and ER services. We saw a lot of kids going to the ER that didn't necessarily need to be there. In fact, 80% of the kids that went were discharged without any behavioral intervention. So we started running PUC back in August of this year, and it's been successful beyond our wildest imagination. But we had to shut it down, of course, when COVID started. And what we did to keep supporting families in the beginning, we have our Family Emergency Services line, which is a crisis line specializing for families and kids. We expanded that. Before it was 5 days a week, 8 to 8, to 7 days a week, 8 to 8, with multiple people on call. That was our step one. And then we closely worked with our general crisis department, who covers 24/7, and made a really tight web to try to support parents and families and kids who were being seen. Although we noted a decrease in calls, what we did note was a slight increase in intensity of the call, and that we were getting calls, actually, even though we're looking at younger kids, on a lot of older kids. After a lot of discussion and trying to figure out what families needed and what we were seeing from our case managers and our family outreach practitioners who were providing service via Zoom, we realized we needed to reopen PUC. We needed that stopgap, because at this point, we definitely don't want kids in the ER. This is the last place they need to be, besides the trauma with the possible COVID exposure. So after a lot of planning and safety planning for staff, as you can see, I'm in my scrubs because I was at Fest today. We have everyone in scrubs and changing at work and things like that. We reopened this week. We've already had 4 kids through, and I think that's just going to keep amping up. And I would say all of these kids probably would have ended up in the ER. But what we're able to do, which I think is great, is work with case managers, community partners, anyone who's available to sort of try to preempt the crisis in the home. So if we know a kid is really starting to struggle and the family is really struggling, we're actually looking at scheduling to bring kids in, so we can actually do some pre-crisis work. We know they're on the edge, they're about to go, so they can come in, they can work with a master's level practitioner, a case manager, community support worker, and provide that safety net that I think families need. In addition, if you look at what we're doing, we struggle with a connectivity issue. One of the things that we've done is we've invested some funds that we had and bought a bunch of inexpensive tablets, and we're giving them to clients who might need them, along with helping them get connection services. We are doing the telehealth and the Zoom. Food insecurity is a huge one. We've actually had case managers and people picking up. We have a Veggie Van Go, which is free vegetables a couple times, about once a month. We actually have case managers picking that stuff up and delivering them to the door for clients who might need them and are not mobile. We've helped with academics because parents are overwhelmed. So we arranged sort of drop-offs where parents would put all their paper packets into a plastic bag on their mailbox or driveway, porch. We'd pick them up, sort them, organize them, and send them back. We created a sensory box where we had all kinds of different sensory tools, and depending on the issue, we were able to deliver to someone's door in a plastic bag, again, sensory tools they could use with their kid who might be in crisis or needing them. So we've had some real success. One of my favorite stories is we have a kiddo who really struggles, who had a lot of wraparound services. Mom was very apprehensive about the switch telehealth because she felt like he was not going to engage. First Zoom call he had with his clinician, he suggested playing Connect 4. So they spent a half an hour playing Connect 4 via Zoom. And ever since then, he's been completely engaged. So we see it working. I think we're all trying to learn as we go and do everything we can to support the families around us. We also have started planning on reopening. In fact, that's what I've been doing all day, is creating a stage-by-stage plan to figure out what's going to look like when we slowly, gradually start to move forward. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to mute myself.
Thanks, Kaya. Really impressive, the thoughtfulness that you all are working on to support kids and families. We also have Noreen Shapiro-Berry from Northeast Kingdom Human Services. Noreen, are you on? You want to share a little bit about what you're working on?
Yeah, hi. Hi, everybody. So I hail to you from the Northeast Kingdom Human Services in the Valley of Jay Peak from my son's bedroom. And I'm excited to be able to chat with you today. Linda McNowitz asked me to share a little bit about what's happening at Northeast Kingdom Human Services in the Children's Department. So myself and Vicki Whitehill are the directors. I am in charge of school-based services, and she's in charge of home and community support. She's on another call right now. So we're kind of tag teaming. I can tell you the school-based services are similar to what you've heard already. Primarily, we're doing telehealth using phone and video conference. We do have some staff that are providing some face-to-face supports, very limited, as you can imagine. But for some of these kids who just are not going to be able to respond in those other ways of supporting, that they do much better face-to-face. We have had a request for some of our staff to be able to provide support to children in childcare settings, and these are children of essential workers. And these are students that we were serving in like a BI capacity in schools. So we are trying to meet that need. It's hard, as you can imagine, but what we're managing to, because we're a small organization in that department, we were able to at least meet the need for those couple of kids that need that intense level of services. What we were been able to do, because I've had staff who have had a little bit more availability because school's been closed, at least how we knew it, and now it's moved to these virtual platforms, I've had the ability to be able to staff what we've called a parent support line. And we started it just with myself and two other folks initially, because we were the ones who had pagers, and we're using paging as the way to make it an easy system. Started on April 2nd. We were just doing it 8:30 to 5, just during business hours. And then most recently, April 20th, we moved it to 24/7. So we just finished our first weekend of being on call. And parents are able to, parents or guardians, whoever wants help, can come and call with any need that they might have, as long as it's a parenting issue. It could be for early childhood, it can be for school age, it can be for, you know, you're home with your college age kid who's now here, who wasn't before, and, you know, all the challenges of working from home or being laid off, all the challenges that we're dealing with as professionals trying to work from home, it's all multiplied. So I'm really happy to be able to do that for folks, and wanting to think of ways to be able to sustain it post COVID-19. Not quite sure what that's going to look like, but at this point we're motivated to be able to do that. So what I can do is I can post the number in the chat box. It's specifically for the Northeast Kingdom, but it's open to anybody actually in the state of Vermont. No 802 needed. So I'll put that in there. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Noreen. That's great. Is there anyone else who would like to share a short story? Anne, you have a story of resilience or families or community response?
Just a brief update from the STARS assessors, because we're not obviously doing program assessments right now. We've redirected our energy to professional development, building a bit on what Julie shared, and have offered a 3-part series that has to do with one of the program assessment tools that we use, introducing it and then going in more depth how it relates to Vermont Early Learning Standards and to Teaching Strategies Gold, and also activities that support this quality programming. And we've had just a terrific response from early care and education providers. They really the ones who are available are maximizing their time using it for professional development. And so we've added more sessions, and that's been pretty exciting. And in May, in addition to the infant toddler environmental rating scale, we'll be talking about the class. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Anne. So I'd love to switch gears a little bit. The second question that, Building Bright Futures has been spending a lot of time listening and convening. And one of the things that we're really working on is to try and identify where there are gaps or barriers that will require strategizing and a coordinated response. And particularly concerned about, as we've heard, how kids and families are dealing with these super stressful situations. Stacy, I think you're on the call. Stacy Garcia de Alba is from DCF Family Services in the Springfield area region, as well as working for 211, and invited her to start to give us a sense of what she's seeing and hearing.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Garcia de Alba. Beth, nice job on the last name. And thank you and Ellen for inviting me to this call. It's nice to see so many familiar faces today and meet a lot of new ones. So yeah, I wear many hats in Southeast Vermont, and so I'm going to start with my Vermont 211 hat. I cover Orange, Windsor, and Windham counties, but I thought what may be the most useful for this call in this group is to give you an overview of what kind of calls we've been receiving at Vermont 211, so that you could get an idea of, the barometer of needs that Vermonters are facing. And again, I will send a summary because I'm going to be sharing some numbers and a lot of information, so I'm happy to get that out to someone for the notes if you miss anything. In the month of March, we had over 6,000 calls, and most of those calls were around housing. Most of the housing calls were for folks that were homeless. So part of my job recently, because of the pandemic, has been to listen to some of those voicemails, and we're finding that a lot of folks aren't able to pay their rent, or they're getting kicked out of their housing. Circumstances are changing, and so that remains one of our highest reasons for call. We also provide the after-hours emergency housing for economic services. So any calls from 4:30 p.m. to 7:45 a.m. We're following the ESD guidelines and housing those folks too. So that's a lot of what those numbers may be as well. And then we had calls, around COVID-19, general questions, specific questions, general information services that we would typically get, public assistance and tax assistance. And then as we moved into April, from the 1st to the 21st, we had 3,370 calls. 938 of those were COVID related, and we housed about 800 Vermonters from March 1st. We're averaging about 200 calls a day right now, which is quite a bit. And so I just want to remind folks that if people are calling us and they're getting our voicemail, which they're not used to please make sure that you're leaving your name and a number for us to call you back at, because we don't have a service where we can look up that number and give somebody a call back unless they're leaving that information. As we've moved into April, the flavor of the calls has changed a little bit. We're seeing a lot with unemployment calls, and every single time that the governor does a press conference, whatever new topic or hot topic is on that call, that's kind of where our call volume goes up. But those are remaining steady, and we continue to see that folks have a lot of basic needs questions. So putting my other hat on, I am the Foster Parent Recruitment and Retention Specialist for DCF Family Services Springfield District Office. Some of the districts are seeing that our intakes are going down, and I think part of that is due to kids not being in school or in childcare as often, and so some of those reports aren't coming in like we would normally see. Typically in the summer we see it kind of dip down because they're not having those eyes on that they normally would during the school year, and so that's a little bit of a pattern. In the Springfield District Office, though, we actually saw an increase of kids coming into care once the pandemic hit, which was kind of odd. Our numbers have tended to be a little bit lower than they have in previous years. And so that was something that I was interested in and had some conversations with our district director to try to figure out some patterns and themes as to why, we had an increase. So after, as we've moved into April, she definitely said that our calls and kids coming into care are around substance misuse. The nature of our accepted reports are typically around neglect, lack of age-appropriate care due to parental incapacity, and then some physical abuse to caretakers being out of control with their anger. And again, the families that we're working with, we tend to see all of these things happen all the time, but specifically in this pandemic, as many others have shared, you know, folks are having a hard time coping with it. It's really, really difficult. You know, so for any of our families that were struggling already with parenting, now they're becoming teachers and parents, and they're stuck at home, or they aren't able to connect with anyone because they don't have internet access or things like that. So it's been a really interesting time with the families that we're working with. I specifically work with kinship and foster caregivers, and we're finding that what we typically would see is just magnified. You know, they have kiddos that have challenging behaviors all the time. They come from huge amounts of trauma, and again, now that they're isolated in many ways, it's just even harder. So we're trying to get creative around how we can provide respite and what that looks like. Something that we are always looking for at Family Services is our caregivers in general, and that need still exists, if not more. I know in my district, we have many kids that are for adoptions, and there are no potential homes in sight, which is really sad and scary. And, you know, I think that they know that, and that adds some increased anxiety, some more difficult behaviors in the home, and then really burnt out foster families. We also do a lot of kinship placement in our district, and I think the state as a whole has really improved with that. But we're finding that some of our kinship caregivers are just saying at this time with the pandemic, we can't do this. So probably week 2, we started in our district offering some virtual times for folks to get connected. Some of those are structured support groups, and some of those are just what we're calling virtual coffee hour, where they can pop in anytime that they want and talk about anything really, but just get connected. And those seem to be going well. But yeah, there's a huge need for caregivers that remains. And I've been really grateful for my BBF council and Ellen and Dora, because I sit on 3 councils. They've been really great about connecting us and getting the word out to folks. And also the Springfield Area Parent-Child Center and many community partners. So I just want to say a really big thank you to all of you for the work that you're doing. And I'll stop now because that's a lot.
That is a lot. It's amazing how many hats you wear. Thank you, Stacy, for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Whew. I have 2 more folks who are who have joined to share some of their perspective, and then we'll be able to open it up for others to share their questions or concerns. We have George Karabakakis from the Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services of Southeast Vermont. George, do you want to share a little bit about what you're working on and concerned about?
Yes, and oh, and you got my name right. That was perfect.
Right.
So no, that's great. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me, and I really enjoyed hearing stories and hearing what everybody's doing. It's been really great, and it's, you know, needless to say, this is an incredibly challenging time for some of you, or those of you who don't know. We're the designated community mental health agency in southeastern Vermont, Windham and Windsor counties. And, you know, we really early on, I think it was March 3rd, we pulled together an emergency preparedness response team. And there was about 12 of us, our division directors and the whole, our whole agency, you know, representatives from across the agency came together to figure out how we can address the issues. So we've gone remote. Pretty much 90 to 95% of our staff are working remotely. We are providing residential services. We're providing services to kids that are highly acute, that where there's some really significant challenges. we're providing, we have 5 hospitals that we're serving within our 2 counties, and we're providing crisis evaluations, psychiatry, therapy, group therapy, skills groups. We're providing all of those remotely via Zoom for the most part, but it's a real challenge. I mean, what we're seeing with families and kids is that they are so resilient. It is absolutely astounding what they have on their plate and what they're able to handle and how they're really working through this. But as we all are having challenges, I think each and every one of us has our own unique challenges in this world, dealing with the fear and the anxiety and so forth. I think theirs are compounded, including, and others have talked about, poverty. The fact that there is no connectivity in a lot of parts of both our counties. There is no internet connectivity. There are hotspots. We've been bringing tablets and iPads and phones to clients, trying to support them in identifying hotspots. And we're also doing a lot of work with food. Food insecurity is a huge issue. It's a real challenge. I think it was late last week in Springfield, there were MREs, or meals ready to eat, I think is what and there were MREs that were put out there by the National Guard to families and individuals in need. And there were 35 pallets, and they went within the morning. So they had to go and get another 30 pallets. And this was in Springfield to support families. So it's a real challenge. Some of the, so all our services are being provided remotely, and we're doing, I think, some pretty creative things, everything from karaoke to bingo, to Jeopardy, to trivia games, to skills groups and nutrition groups and parent training groups, and some behavioral based, some options trainings, just a whole range of things that we're doing via Zoom, which is really pretty remarkable that we've been able to sort of move our whole system over to telemedicine and telehealth. We're still out in the community, whether it's injections or medication drops or things like that. We also operate as part of our agency, Kindle Farm School, which is a therapeutic school for boys from grades 2 to 12. And we're delivering academics, we're delivering clinical services remotely, behavioral coaching and connection. We're also bringing food to families on a weekly basis. And in some cases, we're actually cooking full meals for the whole family, because there's certain families who are in real need. And so we're doing some of those things. We've also started a warm line for families and individuals throughout our 2 counties. We started with clients, but then we've expanded it 7 days a week. And this is something we created. We didn't have it before. We basically took staff that were willing, that we redeployed. We provided training and support. Our peer support staff have provided that training. So now we've been up and running, providing a warm line supports to folks, to families and individuals in the community. And I think the last thing I'll say, and certainly if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But the last thing I want to mention is that probably one of the most important things in all of this is our staff and the health and safety of our staff. And because without our staff and without staff that are really supported and that are going through this process and really healthy, none of this could happen. So we're doing Zoom support groups. We call them support groups. And we have breakout sessions within them around working from home as a parent, which is unique, is different than working at home and being isolated, providing services remotely. And we've also, I forgot to mention, we have critical outreach teams in each of our region with each of our divisions. And we're doing that with children, youth, and families as well. And that's been really pretty amazing, reaching out to folks with our teams. But back to staff, that's been so key. We have Zoom yoga groups that we have every day at noon. And we're just doing a lot of Zoom support for staff because it really is a challenge going through the stages that I think we're all going through, from, sort of anger and, disbelief to, acceptance and hopefully growth, because I think we're learning a lot, and so it's a process. So yeah, those are some of the things we're doing, and we're seeing a lot of challenges, as others have mentioned: anxiety, depression, trauma. I think the big issue is going to be, once we've moved on, I think we're going to see a lot of more coming our way. And so I think that there's going to be some challenges to come. So
Thank you, George.
yeah.
Appreciate you sharing all of that.
Sure.
It's a lot of quick movement and rearranging. We have one more person who's joined us to share a story, and then if there's someone else who would like to share after, just let me know in the chat. Gretchen is from Good Beginnings of Central Vermont, and is going to talk about her work with young families.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Beth. A lot of new faces to me on this call. I'm really excited to be joining this call. For those of you who don't know Good Beginnings, we're a community-based organization in Central Vermont, and in normal circumstances, we provide in-home respite and social and emotional support for families who are caring for newborns. And it's primarily via trained volunteers. So we're not clinicians and we're not health workers. It's a community-based service for folks in the postpartum period. And Beth asked me to share an illustrative story of one of our families to give you a sense of what we're seeing. And I'm going to talk about a woman who was referred to us prenatally a few months ago by the local designated agency, Washington County Mental Health. And so she had arrived in Vermont recently from out of state with her partner and her 14-month-old. And she had a history of mental health diagnoses and a traumatic birth experience with her first child. And so that's why she was working with Washington County Mental Health. And the original goal of connecting us to her prenatally was to establish a connection with us and that bond, so that we could go into the home and provide in-home support postpartum and be there to provide emotional and social support and be an extra resource for her. She was very isolated even before the COVID situation. Again, she had recently moved here from out of state, no local relatives, all of her extended family was out of state. She works remotely out of her home, so no chance to establish work connections in Vermont either. Her partner doesn't drive, and they live in a very rural location. And so obviously, when the COVID situation hit, all of this was intensified, and her plans for her birth, which was a real source of anxiety for her already because she'd had a traumatic birth experience with her first child, sort of fell through. And so we ended up providing a lot of additional emotional support and just being another sounding board for her, together with Washington County Mental Health, to figure out an alternate birth plan for her. She ended up deciding to do a scheduled induction so that she could drive herself to the hospital, because again, her partner doesn't drive and she doesn't have any local support here. She was able to have a doula attend her birth. And one bright spot and example of resilience and amazing work on the part of CVMC is that her family members who had planned to come from out of state to attend the birth were able to attend via Zoom. So that's pretty special that was able to work. but here's where it gets tough and what Good Beginnings is seeing. She's now home with a partner whose relationship, their relationship has been deteriorating, and a 16-month-old and a newborn in a very isolated place with no local connections. And all of our usual opportunities for supporting her have been essentially hamstrung by the COVID epidemic. So we are connecting with her remotely via phone, and Washington County Mental Health is providing her with tele support. But for the work we do and the needs that our families have, that just feels really woefully inadequate. Really at this point in the parenting process, what people need more than ever is hands-on support and that physical respite so they can take care of themselves. And so the final thing I would say is this is one of the families who has remained connected to us, but what's even more worrying to me is that we're seeing a real drop-off in families staying engaged because of the limitations in how we can support them. So there's a lot of folks who are doing it on their own in the postpartum period, and we don't have our eyes on them, and we don't know how they're faring.
Thank you, Gretchen. Appreciate you sharing that, and for all of your work to try and connect with families the best that you can. Wow, well, we have covered a really wide spectrum, and really appreciate everyone who's prepared to come and share. I think it really represents quite a bit of the work that BBF councils are doing regionally and the work that we're doing at a state level. Not seeing that anyone else wants to share, I'm going to hand this back to Morgan.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who has taken the time to be on our call today. I do want to take just a couple of minutes to go back to my opening remarks where I said, you know, BBF's role in this moment hasn't changed. And that being said, we have seen our work amplified in different ways. We have seen partners come together in ways that we haven't in a very long time. We're seeing some incredibly strong cross-agency partnerships. We're seeing connections across different levels, right? So we're seeing so many different opportunities for our folks on the ground, for families to be engaged in different aspects of our work. And really want to build on our ability to continue to make those connections and to make sure that we're able to elevate these messages to our decision makers statewide and make sure that the stories and the things that are happening on the ground are informing their decisions, are informing policy moving forward. So I do want to just take a moment to say to you all, to the State Advisory Council, to other partners across the state who are on this call, you know, how else can BBF lean in this moment and be supporting you all in whatever sector, in whatever the role, recognizing that our primary responsibilities in this moment is to neutrally convene and bring folks together, to be monitoring the system of services and then elevating those messages. I know that, you know, if you talk to our regional coordinators, you'll also hear that there's so much more direct service-like work happening on the ground in collaboration with our regional coordinators and other partners, but what else are you hearing as needs in this moment that we should be paying attention to? Okay, so the other thing I want to draw your attention to is our new, a major component of our website that I really appreciate the team at Building Bright Futures standing up in the last month or so. So we have developed an early childhood COVID response page. And there are 4 different sections of this website. So the first is a very robust amount of resources. So this includes national, but also statewide resources that you can find on this page. We also are allowing folks who have additional resources that we haven't captured there yet to include them and to send those to us. We're also posting on a daily basis on our Instagram and our Facebook page for folks who are sending very concrete, specific things for kids and families. So that is updated on a daily basis, so keep checking into our resource page. Another new component of our work has been to stand up a section to ask a question. So one of the things that we have found so critical is for folks to have an opportunity to ask a question to agency partners and to decision makers. So one of the things that BVF has been doing is monitoring all of the different questions that we're hearing in every sector and then sending them directly to our agency partners. And that information is being used to inform guidance documents as well as their frequently asked questions. Another new component of our work that actually stemmed from our most recent State Advisory Council in March was the development of early childhood forums. So similar to what we did today, we have started to partner with Let's Grow Kids and the Agency of Education, as well as the Child Development Division, to stand up early childhood forums on childcare. So we've held 2 of those so far. Incredible attendance where we've been able to provide direct connection with folks on the ground to our agency partners to share updates and then have direct question and answers. So as you're thinking about the range of topics we've discussed today, specifically in the areas of family safety and mental health, but also others that we didn't discuss as much before today, like housing and homelessness, as well as children in custody. What are the other topic areas that we should be considering for early childhood forums moving forward? We'd be happy to partner with you on those. And then lastly, we have been documenting stories of resilience. So to end today's meeting on a really positive note, we have started a new campaign called Vermont Strong Kids, where we have been asking folks across the state to use the hashtag Vermont Strong Kids to share a photo, a story, using examples of resilience and how folks across the state are identifying how folks are supporting kids and families and how they're displaying strong families and what they're doing to support one another in this moment. So I see that there is a little bit more discussion going on in the chat. I would invite anyone who has any last minute questions or comments, thoughts around BBF's role in this moment to jump on. Flor, did you want to jump in really quick?
No, sorry, I didn't realize that I had just emailed you that and it was on my, it was there and it went through. But yeah, I was just trying to agree that, yeah, keeping an eye on the money that is coming in from the state so that it stays for children's programs is important.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, you know, like I mentioned, we have been having weekly, if not bi-weekly check-ins with our agency partners, providing information to the legislature as well as to the governor's team to let them know, you know, what we're hearing about what's happening on the ground for children and families. And we will continue to do all of those things. So thank you all so much. And, you know, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us on this call today. I think it's so critical that such a strong group of leaders and families are coming together to have challenging discussions about how we move forward with kids and families in the state of Vermont, especially during the next couple of months. And as we think about what reopening will look like and how we need to adapt to meet those needs. So thank you so much. I am going to ask my team to leave the Zoom link open for a little bit longer to make sure that we can capture the chat. But please check out our website if you have any questions on the role that BBF is playing right now. And as always, feel free to reach out to any member of my team. So thank you so much, and we will see you for next month's meeting.
Thank you, Morgan. Great meeting.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great meeting, Morgan and Beth. Thanks.
Thanks, Renee.
Great to see everyone. Have a good afternoon. Take care, please.
Thank you.